All right, welcome everybody. We're just going to give it another 2 minutes before we get started for this installment of LiveFlow webinar series between LiveFlow and Ramp. So we'll just give another 2 minutes here.
Love it, yeah, and appreciate everyone's time too, especially as we're heading into really the thick of tax season, as well as starting to get close to month-end close for February, if not people who have already started it. So appreciate everyone setting aside some time for us.
That's right. It's not even a leap year, Nigel. So it's not even
No, don't even get that extra day.
Actually, the shortest day, shortest month of the year. So best of luck. All right, we'll just give another minute here, and we'll get started.
While we're waiting too, if people have access to the chat, would love to see kind of who's in attendance, what firms we may have, and two, I love to hear all the different AI tools that people are leveraging. If anyone has a favorite that they're like, this one's the best, there's a lot now of competitors out there. It's past just Chat GPT. So people want to put in either their names and maybe a favorite AI tool that they've been utilizing. Would love to see what people have to say.
Any good responses, Nigel?
Don't see any. Not yet. Oh, the chat is disabled. Thank you, Clarissa.
There we go. Let's see.
I saw that in the Q&A.
Got it. So we'll get started, but we will, in the background, make sure that the chat is enabled. And so to kick things off, welcome everybody to LiveFlow's webinar here. We've got a very special guest. And as a matter of fact, it's a company that I feel like needs no introduction. A company that I feel like if you're in New York City, you definitely see them. And they've also recently had Saquon Barkley, Super Bowl champion, do a recent ad. And so I'm sure everybody has heard of Ramp. So to get things started, we've got Nigel Reef, a solutions consultant at Ramp. And we're going to be discussing how LiveFlow and Ramp over the course of this webinar fit hand in glove. We are two sides of the same coin, and that coin being ledger data. But Nigel, I'd love for you to give a quick introduction of yourself and how you found your time at Ramp.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the intro, Josh, and touting Ramp a little bit. But great to meet everyone. As Josh said, my name's Nigel, solutions consultant at Ramp. You can think of me as kind of your product expert. So going to be happy to walk you through a little bit of Ramp, as well as give you a live demo too of some of the key tools and features of our product. My background, at least though, I actually came from doing ERP and FP&A tool implementations. So I've been all around the accounting technology world, working with various different solutions, different providers. So I'm very much aware of the operational challenges that you all may have, as well as some of the analysis that you then have to do after the fact. So really excited to showcase what Ramp and LiveFlow have to offer to you all to really help make your jobs easier.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nigel. And I also recognize actually there's a lot of different people who are tuning in to this webinar. So I myself, I joined LiveFlow about a year and a half now, and it's been an exciting journey to say the least. Prior to LiveFlow, I worked at JP Morgan on the sales and trading floor, and I'd say that it's a ton of fun working at LiveFlow and the development of the product that I've seen over the past year and a half, and excited to see where we go in 2025. But to kind of set the agenda for how we're going to go about this webinar and the things you're going to see and experience, the first is understanding how these two different softwares align with each other. And that is the middle portion, which is the ledger data, QuickBooks and Xero data. Nigel here is going to share how Ramp automates the most painful bookkeeping tasks on one side of the ledger data system. And then what I'll be talking about is honing in on what I find is probably one of the most powerful products we have at LiveFlow, and that is our multi-entity consolidation product. Then we're actually going to be able to actually see these products, and we're going to be able to showcase on the Zoom or in the webinar itself what these products actually look like. And of course, then we'll hopefully have some time here for Q&A. So to take a look at where these two softwares sit. In the middle here, maybe I'll start there, is what I'm sure if you're in accounting, if you're a finance professional, an in-house finance team, the middle here is something that is very familiar to you, which is QuickBooks and Xero. On the left side is how Ramp automates some of the pre-ledger data entries. So that includes expense management, bill payments, accounts payable, accounting automation, and Nigel here is an expert, and he's going to be able to showcase how exactly they do that. LiveFlow, on the other hand, is once that data is in QuickBooks Online, what we will do is on the opposite side, we'll then extract that data and give you a live pulse of what that data looks like. So we will assist with multi-entity consolidation, real-time reporting, and dynamic financial modeling. But the crux of it is that, once again, these two softwares go hand in hand. And our hope is that throughout the course of this webinar, you'll see exactly how that plays into, into your work, hopefully. So with that said, I'd like to pass it off to Nigel to share a little bit about what is Ramp.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can go ahead and get to our first slide here, where really what Ramp is and what people know about it is the finance automation platform for our finance and accounting teams. But our most famous and flagship product that we started with in 2019 was our Ramp corporate credit card. But that's not really all that different. There's a lot of corporate credit cards out there. So how did Ramp actually break into this? And what was the differentiator that we had? Well, what Ramp noticed is that other corporate credit cards really just provided incentives for customers to spend more. Everything was around giving you more cash back. All that says is, right, they want you to just spend more on their card and you'll get more cash back. While cash back is great, and Ramp certainly wants to offer that, they noticed a little bit was missing. And what finance teams actually wanted was a tool that helped them cut their spending, not just entice them to spend more. And that's where Ramp came onto the scene as a tool that allows customers to be able to control their spending more so and find ways to actually cut as well, where we see customers save on average of 5% annually for their expenses. So in just a little over 5 years of Ramp being in business, we've already amassed over 30,000 customers and are processing $20 billion in payment annually through corporate credit cards and through other bill payment methods like ACH, checks, and so on. So Ramp has really come onto the scene and established itself as a big player in this space and disrupting kind of an industry that had a lot of older incumbents that have just been kind of comfortable in it. So Ramp isn't just a corporate credit card product, though. Ramp is much more than that now. So while we have the corporate credit card and expense management tool, we also have accounts payable tools. So that way you're able to pay all of your bills, invoices in a easy manner. But we also have procurement. So now your entire procure to pay process, from purchase requisitions and purchase orders and vendor management, all the way to the actual payment, can all be handled within Ramp. Top of it, we've also added a travel product to our toolkit, where you're able to book flights and hotels and set up your different policy spend. But of course, none of this would be all that relevant if we didn't have the accounting integrations to back it up. So now, as you're processing all these transactions, we want to make sure that we have the most advanced and up-to-date integrations to different accounting providers, of course, including QuickBooks and Xero. So that way, all the data that is being transacted within Ramp is flowing to your GL appropriately. So as we keep moving forward, we're going to see a little bit of a deep dive into each of these products that I can touch upon. So what we can see here, right, is kind of some of those different items that I touched upon, right, with expense management, for instance, right? With Ramp, you're able to leverage our receipt integrations or suggested memos to help eliminate expense reports entirely. I'm going to showcase this a little bit more in depth later, but really helpful tool for those cardholders to not be wasting time on the actual expense reports. For our accountants and AP clerks, being able to pay your bills in seconds through our advanced OCR that includes line item details, duplicate detection, helping you to actually get invoices paid in a timely manner with minimal manual input. Like we said too with procurement, leveraging our price intelligence and customized request forms to be able to have your entire procure to pay process handled in one system, and leveraging advanced functionality like 2- and 3-way match. And then lastly, some accounting automation as well, with automated coding and reconciliation tools that allow our accounting teams to be able to operate more effectively and close their books faster. So just a quick glimpse at some of the core products that we have here. We're going to dive into a demo and showcase some of it later. But really, what all of those products mean together, what is the value that comes from that? Well, what we can see here is we see 4 different types of tools or kind of processes that businesses have to go through of leveraging corporate cards, expense management, and travel, as well as AP, typically can be housed in 4 different software platforms. And that can be really costly to a business. So what Ramp wants to do is help our customers consolidate all of these different things into one platform. But what is valuable about that? Well, there's 3 key things really. The first is licensing costs, right? With all of these different platforms, you're having to pay fees for all of the users that are actually leveraging these different technologies. When you have 4 or 5 going on at a time, that can be really costly. So why not combine and consolidate all of those into one platform with Ramp and cut down significantly on your licensing costs? Right away, Ramp providing some savings to you. The second thing here too is for ease of use for employees. You have 3, 4 different platforms to navigate between. That can add time to your day. You have to learn different user interfaces, how these different technologies operate. It can be a pain for employees to have to manage all of that. When you have one easy place to go, it helps your employees have a more seamless day-to-day operation by having all of these things located in a simplified platform. So that's the second reason of helping your employees. And then third, what we have too is not only just helping with saving time as well as helping your employees save money, but also data flows, right? If I have 4 different platforms, I have to have this data flow between all of these. I need to build integrations between all the different tools. That way data is flowing effectively. I then have to manage those integrations. Costly, time consuming components of a business that require technical resources to do. I have it all living in one platform. I don't have to worry about that. Now I have all of my data readily available to me, and I don't have to worry about making sure all my syncing is going effectively and having to manage all of those different integrations. Everything is done effectively and accurately when we simplify the amount of platforms we use. So that's one of the key components of Ramp 2 is being able to consolidate. But let's talk about within Ramp some of the kind of what it actually looks like as a card user in this example. So what we tout with Ramp, right, is having those 0-touch expenses. And that is where Ramp is continuing to push to. So to give kind of some quick visuals of what it looks like to actually be a card user with Ramp, on the left-hand side, right, when I swipe my Ramp card, I automatically get a text sent to me that says, hey, we recognize your transaction from this vendor, and for the amount, can you just quickly send us a receipt and a memo so that way we can match it to the transaction, of course, for our compliance reasons and such. Within Ramp, even a crumpled receipt like we see in that picture, Ramp's able to actually pull the data out, match it to the transaction appropriately. Quickly, you can text a memo as well to add to it, and you are done with your expense report. So in a matter of seconds and on the go, even as you wait for your food, you can complete your expense reports with Ramp rather than having to wait and go and sit down at a computer to do it all at once. Top of it too, you can leverage the Ramp mobile app. So instead of having to wait again for a computer, everything can be done on the go. And this is so helpful for especially our users like sales teams members, consultants who may be traveling around and need to be able to just do things with ease. A lot of processes are able to be done within the Ramp mobile app, whether that is, again, completing your own receipts or managers approving transactions. The mobile app is incredibly important for being able to accomplish things on the go and in a quick manner. But lastly, on the right-hand side, what we see is our integrations. So how does that help with expense reports? Well, what we can see in this example is Ramp is actually able to integrate to apps like email. So your Gmail or Outlook, as well as other apps like Uber and Lyft, classic things that we're spending on for business expenses. Ramp's able to integrate to those systems. So when we swipe our Ramp cards, instead of you having to provide Ramp with the information, Ramp's going to go find it for you. So it can go into my email in this example. I used my Ramp card for a United Airlines purchase. It's going to find the receipt in that confirmation email that United sends to me. It's going to immediately pull that into Ramp, attach it, and create a memo for me based on the information in that email. All in all, what that means is that when I swipe my Ramp card, everything else is taken care of, and I don't have to do anything to complete my expense report. That's where Ramp continues to push the envelope and is really being a game changer of eliminating expense reports for our employees. So that was kind of the end users and card holders. What about our accountants, right? What are some key new tools and features that Ramp has that hit home for more of you? One of the new things that we've launched recently is our reconciliation tool. So this is key for being able to get a quick glance to instantly match transactions between Ramp and your accounting system. So you can quickly see at any point throughout the month, not just at month end, but at any point, what's in your actual GL versus what's in Ramp and what may be out of balance. This can be significantly helpful as you're going through month-end close, making sure that everything is lining up and you've accounted for everything appropriately. On top of it, Ramp's going to help you track down what might be missing, whether it's unsynced transactions to your accounting system or maybe missing information from employees. And it's going to allow you to be able to send reminders in bulk with one click to any outstanding tasks that are needed from your team. Incredibly powerful tools that Ramp has to offer here. We'll dive into some of these a little bit more as we get to live demo. But all in all, as we wrap this up, what we're going to see is that Ramp really has a significant economic impact for our customers. As I talked about before, Ramp's goal was to save our customers money as well as time. So we can see based on those accelerated expense reports, we're able to save over 5,000 hours annually to our cardholders by eliminating the tedious task of submitting expenses. But not only to cardholders, our accounting teams, right? Through a reconciliation tool, through automated coding functionality that we have, we're able to save our accountants over 1,000 hours annually as well through minimal time spent coding transactions and then chasing down receipts and extending month-end close. This allows our accounting members to now focus on strategic initiatives rather than just trying to get things together to be able to close the month. But lastly, too, we actually want to have cost savings attributed to Ramp as well. So on average, we see our customers having 5% annual savings on their expenses through a couple of different ways. Some of it can be through just flagging out of policy spend, right? The different spending controls that we're going to dive into to make sure spending is in policy and you can stop it at the card swipe. Top of that too, Ramp wants to be able to notify you of any duplicate spend on either software subscriptions or invoices, right? Helping you to note that you're not double paying for anything accidentally from having a team managing all of your spend. And lastly too, Ramp's also able to help you point out cost savings opportunities with software subscriptions where you may be overpaying, which is incredibly powerful for Ramp.
So Nigel, I do have a quick question here. So it's clear to me that Ramp is saving your customers time and money, but how exactly is Ramp preventing overspend specifically? Is there something that you guys are able to do that can kind of notify your customers when they're overspending, or how should we think about that?
Yeah, exactly. So within that tool, because Ramp, right, is a spending platform, we have a significant amount of market data to understand what the typical amounts are of these different software subscriptions. So for instance, Josh, Microsoft, right? We're all leveraging Microsoft, it seems like. So Ramp's going to be able to see, okay, what industry are you in? What's your company size? And how much are you paying for a specific Microsoft subscription? It'll compare that to market data that we have of other similar companies and how much they're spending for the same Microsoft subscription. And it'll point out to you, hey, you're paying 20% over the average that we find. You should renegotiate your contract with Microsoft to help find some spending, some cost savings opportunities, right? So Ramp is going to utilize its market data and then point out to you different opportunities that you may have for cost savings. And it's not just with subscription prices, it can also be with seat usage. maybe you're paying for 50 seats for this Microsoft subscription, but you're only actually utilizing 30 of them for a long period of time. Ramp's going to point that out to you too and say, hey, maybe we should cut down on the amount of subscriptions or licenses that we have, so that we're actually only buying or paying for what we're leveraging, right? So it's different things like that that allow Ramp to have that kind of guardrails or notifications on overspending in ways that you can negotiate and cut costs.
That's incredible. I think that when it comes to those types of negotiations, it's always tough, and it's very good to have some data, and it's interesting to think of a software partner to help you think about if I'm overspending on certain categories or certain subscriptions as well.
Exactly.
Perfect. And I'm sure our audience is going to be excited when you start to share your screen and we can actually see and delve into the product on how exactly you do that. So this next segment, before we do that, is just understanding a brief overview of what LiveFlow does and how does it play into the data that's feeding in from Ramp into QuickBooks and then QuickBooks to your workbook. But at a glance, what LiveFlow is simply doing is it's taking your ledger data, so that's your QuickBooks Online or Xero data, and it is giving you a live pulse into Google Sheets or Excel. We also do have live dashboards if you want to use that as well. But what we found overall is that when you take accountants, when you take finance teams away from Google Sheets or Excel, you typically limit the amount of flexibility that they have. So that's one of the things that we kind of stick to a little bit here at LiveFlow, and you're going to see in our product how we make sure that we keep our customers within workbooks when they're necessary. When they'd like to. But when it comes to the mapping process or creating certain controls, that is done via the app. So that is the core value of LiveFlow, is automating some of this financial planning and analysis. Now, the product that we're going to see later on today is what I find is the one that saves the most time because of the complexity sometimes when you're using exclusively just workbooks, and that is consolidation. Now, this chart that's created here, what it's simply showing you is 3 different QuickBook files. And when you're trying to create a consolidated financial statement, the process previously would look like bring these, downloading a CSV file every single month, creating some SUMIF formula, maybe an index match formula to do some type of mapping within each of these QuickBook files, and then all of a sudden creating a consolidated financial statement, bringing that all together. With LiveFlow, it looks a little bit different. We do the heavy lifting, where we have these 3 independent QuickBook files, and we're going to connect to them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give you the flexibility within our app, and we're going to be able to see that live on this webinar, to do the custom mapping that you'd like to do. So let's just say in the first file, you have a general ledger account, apples. In the second QuickBook file, you have oranges. And in the third QuickBook file, you have bananas. During our custom mapping, what we can do is you can define what that consolidated account should be, and you just type in fruits, and you simply click them across the different QuickBook files, and then you'd be able to categorize them into the consolidated account. And the outputs, though, are still going to be in Google Sheets or Excel, if you like to, or we also have our live dashboards. So once again, giving you that flexibility. Now, this right here is showing what I find is one of the core elements of the consolidation process. When we start to build products at LiveFlow, we take a deep understanding of what our customers are currently doing. And what you're seeing here is the mapping process. And this is where you're selecting individual general ledger accounts and then bring them over, as we're seeing in the graphic on the left side. So you're going to be able to do this with not just the profit and loss statement, but you're going to be able to do this with the balance sheet and the cash flow statement as well. And if you're, a business or that has entities in foreign nations, we also support custom FX rates as well. So once you've done that custom mapping process, well, now we want to give you that flexibility still. So the output, though, you're going to see it in Google Sheets and Excel, or we also have live dashboards. If you want to maybe have a board presentation and you want to visualize the mappings that you've done and the QuickBooks data, that is where it can be fairly helpful. But generating these live reports allows you to not have to re-download every single month and redo the entire process month over month. Instead, the core principle is that you create something once with LiveFlow in a workbook and you're satisfied with the mappings. And then really, it's pretty dynamic in that once the next quarter rolls around, the data is flowing live from your ledger, right? The data that was provided by Ramp from the beginning that flowed into the ledger is now flowing into LiveFlow. And we're going to see exactly how that data flows later in the presentation. So without further ado, I think the most important thing is now that we've kind of talked about it and set the frame, now you can actually see how these two different softwares interact and make your lives hopefully a little bit easier. So what I'll do now is I'll actually pass it over to Nigel to showcase a little bit about how Ramp looks like on the user side.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Does my screen look okay with Ramp up? Awesome. All right. So what we'll quickly kind of dive through is a couple different components of Ramp and what it's going to look like for kind of an end user or card holder, as well as what it'll be for managers and accountants as well, or bookkeepers that are utilizing Ramp for expense management. So in this account, right, I'm an admin, so I have access to everything under the sun in Ramp. So permissions and the tools available will look a little different for each different kind of user, but some of the look and feel will be the same. So at least, right, for our end users, right, our card holders, right, they're going to have access to this My Ramp page, which is going to give them an overview of all of their expenses that they've submitted and let them know if there's anything that needs their attention, right? So everything is housed in one place for them, and it's very easy to see if something needs their attention, or if I have reimbursements that have been paid, or maybe other transactions that maybe are awaiting approval. So all of it easily stored in one place. But then for managers and such, I actually want to talk a little bit about what it looks like to issue cards to our different users. So there's two different kinds of cards that we talk about with Ramp. There's the physical cards, which, like you're probably thinking, are those actual plastic or metal cards that I have in my wallet and that I'm able to bring with me and swipe, tap, and transact with at any store. So that is, just as it says, the actual physical card you're going to have on hand. Our virtual cards are a little bit different, right? Like they're saying, there's no actual physical presence for them, but they do function like credit, or they can function like credit cards. They do have a credit card number and all information like that. So for any online purchases, I can enter straight in my virtual card number. But more importantly, these virtual cards really function as kind of spending budgets or, allocations of funds for different spending situations. And the reason for this is to allow for different types of controls for different kinds of spend that may be going on. So let's dive into this virtual card and see what it would actually look like if I wanted to create and distribute this. So the first thing that we see, right, is I select a card owner where I can send this to one or multiple people to have a virtual card available to them. After that, right, then I can quickly say what this card is for. And maybe, right, I have a sales team and I'm just setting up a sales travel budget for my entire sales team. And maybe since I'm sharing this across multiple of them, I'll say their budget is $7,500 and I can even set up a cadence for how often this budget should reset. Maybe they're just going on one trip to a prospect and you just want to allocate them funds for this one trip. Great. I can say it does not repeat. They get the 7,500 and that's it after. Or maybe I want this to repeat on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or even yearly basis, right? So all these different kind of intervals I can have set up so that way I don't have to continue to redistribute funds. I can say every month, this is the amount that this team is able to spend on this. So quickly able to set that up. And then even with a submission policy, really what this is outlining is what information do my card holders need to enter in when they're spending, right? Do I want them to maybe add in like what department this transaction is going to be related to, or maybe even want them to say what GL code this should be, right? I can set that up in submission policies to make it so my employees need to enter in more information for specific things, or I can set it up so my employees don't need to enter in much information at all. Maybe it's quickly just add their receipt and they're done, right? So different submission policies I can tag to different virtual cards. So that way I can decide how much information my users need to put into it. But like I said, this is a sales team travel budget, right? So this isn't just going to be for one person. So actually what we're able to do is share this card with multiple people all at once, right? So I can have Andy and Angela also included on this sales team travel card. So we can all have this $7,500 budget shared together, right? And we're all able to use the card on our own too, right? So that's really key, being able to have singular virtual cards, but share them across multiple team members if necessary, or can also just have one card per employee, depending on how we want to set that up. But total flexibility available with Ramp. Moving through that too, the next cool thing with Ramp, one of our key features, right, is our spending controls and restrictions, right? So we can actually restrict or set up different kinds of controls on either categories of vendors or merchants and what we do or do not want people to be able to spend at, or specific merchants. If I want to make sure, I actually can't spend or can only spend this card at certain individual merchants. So for instance, with our categories, right, let's say, for instance, I want to block certain categories from being able to be transacted with on this virtual card. So I can go ahead and say, yep, these categories are now going to be blocked based on what I select here. And I have a drop down of varying different kind of categories that the kind of credit card industry basically categorizes all vendors into. So for my sales travel team, maybe I want to say, yeah, blocked categories. Yeah, I want to make sure that this team is not spending any company money on gambling, on clubs and memberships, and maybe any fines, since we know one of our teammates maybe gets parking tickets every once in a while. Right, so I can set up these different kinds of category restrictions to make sure that at the swipe of the card, the transaction is automatically declined because it fits into one of these categories. And I can do the same thing, but instead say allowed. So maybe instead I want to say, oh, this is my travel card. Well, this should only be used for airlines, car rental, lodging, and travel, right? Same kind of thing, but now this is the only places that this card can be used for. So depending on how strict we want to set up those controls, we have the ability to do that within Ramp. And again, not only just at the category level, but also at the merchant level, where I can say, oh, for this card, I only want to make sure I'm utilizing certain merchants for it. Maybe it's Airbnb for lodging, as well as Hyatt, and then Delta for our flights. And I want to make sure that's the only merchants that this card is able to be transacted with, so I can make sure I'm controlling this effectively. Right? So different levels of control that are all completely optional and totally dependent on kind of the spending situation and what controls you may want to put in place, but all of it completely available to you to set up to make sure that all of the spending going on with this card is staying in policy and is relevant to the actual business situation. On top of it, of course, we can also add a start and end date to the card of between what time periods that card can actually be leveraged, as well as a max spend amount. So, right, for one card swipe, maybe I only want $1,000 to be the max. I don't want anyone to be able to spend, $5,000 on one single item for this. Or, right, I can leave it blank and have it be so there's no restriction there, right? So with Ramp, you have total capability to make it as strict as you want or have it be as loose as you want. And you can decide that dependent on the card, who it's shared with, and maybe what the reasoning for the card is. But on top of that too, one of the really cool features of this as well that you can leverage with Ramp is our transaction coding rules on this card. So great, I know this is my sales team travel budget. And when it comes to every single swipe, I don't want to have to code every single dimension with that for every transaction that occurs. I know every single time that this card is swiped, I know my QuickBooks category is going to be my travel and entertainment expenses. So I can set that up at the card level. So now anytime this card is swiped, every transaction automatically gets tagged with my QuickBooks category of travel expenses. I always have the ability to change that right on the transaction itself. So I'm not locked into this, but I can help save myself a lot of time by setting up this in advance. Right, for QuickBooks vendor, I could set this up so it's automatically tagged with it, but that's probably not relevant for this card since I know there's going to be multiple vendors spent on it. What about my department? Well, I know this is my sales team card, so I can automatically code my QuickBooks department to sales. Same thing with class. Well, I know all of my sales team members are in New York, so I can put my QuickBooks class to New York. And now I've got half of my dimensions available to me in QuickBooks already coded once the card is swiped, right? Helping to save our accounting team so much time of having to manually go through and accomplish this. But that's not the only place that we can do this as well. And I'm going to dive into that in just a moment. But this is pretty much just as easy as it gets for setting up a Ramp virtual card. And how that connects to that physical card, right, that we had talked about earlier, is when I swipe my physical card, Ramp's going to automatically see what that transaction is and then match it to a virtual card, right? A virtual card being that kind of budget or allocated amount of funds that is relevant to that spend. So if I have a couple different cards available to me, maybe one's for office supplies, maybe one's for travel, and maybe one's for meals. When I swipe my card for United Airlines, Ramp's going to automatically know to match that physical card transaction to my travel card or virtual card, right? So I'm able to have Ramp automatically decide it for me. Or what I can also do, maybe I just have, hey, I'm going on a client trip. Every single transaction is going to be tagged to this specific virtual card. I can manually connect my virtual card to my physical card. So every transaction my physical card does gets connected to that virtual card that I had specifically set up to say, yeah, for this moment in time, connect every transaction to it. So that's kind of how that works. So physical card is actually just used for paying and swiping, or virtual card is set up for spending controls, for automated coding rules, and to kind of allow for different kind of budgets to be set for different spending situations. There's a lot that you can do with it as well to be able to kind of customize this to fit your business needs, but just wanted to at least touch upon it in this example. On top of that too, right, I want to kind of hone in on that automated coding capability. So we talked about one way that we can do it is within that virtual card, having coding automatically set up for me. But that's not the only place too that we can do it. I clicked into this credit card transaction from Sweetgreen. So someone who was ordering lunch for us. And what we can see here is, okay, I've got some different accounting dimensions to code for me. I can see here my QuickBooks category needs to be filled in. Well, every single time that I'm transacting at Sweetgreen or something similar, I know this is going to be coded to my meals account. So why don't I set up a rule for it, right? And right next to it, we can see that yellow lightning bolt. Ramp is telling me, you want to create a rule for this? Let's do it. So now I can set up with Ramp to say anytime Sweetgreen is used or anytime a restaurant is swiped at, right? Instead of that merchant category. So anytime a restaurant is used, I can dictate what category or account I want that transaction tagged to. So that will be true for this transaction and any other transaction that Ramp has that is unsynced at this point, at least in its database. It will automatically code all those transactions for me. So by creating this one rule, we can see I have 21 unsynced transactions that have a Sweetgreen that are used, or 21 transactions from Sweetgreen that I don't have coded yet. This rule, I can code 21 different transactions just by one click, right? But it's not only that, it might also be what department my user's in, right? I'm in the admin role, so I'm an executive. So maybe it's anytime it's an executive, we want to do that, or anytime it's San Francisco, right? So I have the ability to create these more customized rules depending on what kind of spending situation we see. But it's not just for QuickBooks category. Maybe even for QuickBooks department, I know whenever this is being spent at Sweetgreen as our vendor, or like we said, maybe it's when I have my executive department myself, I can set up my QuickBooks department to automatically code to finance in this example. So now every single time a transaction goes through that an executive team member is doing, that's automatically going to the finance department, right? Saving us, again, time for having to manually code our transactions. So I wanted to make sure to point that out too, right? And just get a quick glimpse at how easy it is to actually code and go through transactions in Ramp. Really quick too, just want to touch upon our inbox, right? This is again, more so for managers of teams who are going to be approving and reviewing transactions. So this is kind of that first line, and that this inbox area where they can control any approvals or tasks that may be needed of them in one place. Where we can see at the top, I've got a couple different tabs kind of showcasing different types of spend, right? Whether it's my credit card transactions, reimbursement requests, or even bills or invoices that are being paid, what needs my approval? It's very easy in Ramp too, where for instance, in these credit card transactions, I can see exactly what is ready to approve, meaning it fits all of my spend policy that I've outlined, and there's no additional action or information needed like receipts or memos or any kind of coding. Ramp will flag to me, this is ready to approve, and I can go ahead, select multiple at once, and go ahead and approve them in bulk. But same thing too, if it'll flag to me when different transactions are in need of attention. And if I hover over that little flag, it'll tell me, ooh, your receipt actually doesn't match this transaction. So I can see that and immediately go ahead and say, I'm going to request changes from that cardholder and say, submit new receipt. And now my cardholder knows exactly what I need of them in order to make this transaction go through, right? As easy as that, it can be to manage your transactions in Ramp. And last thing I'll touch upon too, just to fly through this, right, is our bill pay functionality and some of the automations and capabilities here, where I'll just jump into one of the bills we have, but really quickly, few ways to get bills into Ramp. We of course have an email address that you can set up forwarding rules to. If you have an AP inbox set up, automatically forward any email sent there to Ramp, and that will allow Ramp to ingest that invoice document and send it through our OCR tool. You can upload bills directly to Ramp as well. Maybe I have some on my computer, or a vendor accidentally sent it to me. I can also upload bills via spreadsheet if vendors do that, or maybe through migration efforts. And of course, I can also create bills if I don't have a physical invoice document ready. But if I jump into this, what we can see with our bill pay tool, right, is I've got on the left-hand side my actual invoice document, on the right-hand side, my input or my intake form. And what we see here is a couple of these lightning bolt symbols. What that means is these are fields that Ramp actually took from the document, scanned it with its OCR tool, and inputted it into the form for me. So this bill that I haven't really touched yet, I can see I have my invoice number, the date and due date, a description, and even a matching purchase order if I'm leveraging two-way match, automatically assigned for me. As I continue to scroll down, we can see I have all of my different line items from my invoice separated out for me with all the amounts. And we can see too, from different coding rules that I'd set up, I had this bill actually already code my QuickBooks category and my class based on information in the bill. So that way I don't have to do anything. I can just go in and say, is this relevant for a customer or specific job? Or maybe is it billable? Easy as that, if relevant, but I've already gotten 90%, if not more, of the work done for me. Then as we scroll down to, last thing to mention here is, right, different payment methods. You have ACHs, checks by mail, and Ramp cards that are all free of transactional charges. No fees attributed to any of these payment methods. And you're able to use them as frequently as you want. Domestic and international wires do have a small fee, which is just kind of passed on from those different payment methods and are pretty standard in the industry. And you, of course, also have the option to say you're not going to pay this actually with Ramp. Maybe you would already cut a check and sent it yourself, or you paid for this in person. You can also say, I'm not paying for this in Ramp, just to make sure you have tracking available to you. But all of those different payment methods easily available to all of our customers. So that way you can pay based on what vendors may want or their preferred method of payment, or what your team may prefer. So that's a really quick rundown of some of the key features and tools of Ramp, but I want to make sure that we have enough time for Josh to showcase LiveFlow. And now after we have all these transactions and sync them to QuickBooks, how LiveFlow is going to be able to then allow you to empower your reporting on it all.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Nigel. Yeah, I think that certain things I feel like when I interact with accountants, finance teams, it's usually when they have a bunch of uncategorized transactions, they have to go through QuickBooks and then go through that entire process. It's best to kind of address that before the spend even actually happens. So now what I want to delve into is, now that we have that information in QuickBooks Online, how can we help on the other side of the equation? And Nigel, if you could just confirm that you can see my screen here.
Yep, I can see the spreadsheet.
Excellent. So the way LiveFlow works, and this is also very, very similar to what we see, if not identical, in Excel, is that this is looking at Google Sheets. In an extension, you'll see LiveFlow, and you'll see these different options. As soon as I hit Create Report, what's happening is there's a panel that pops out on the right side. Now, once again, the data has flown already into QuickBooks Online with the help of Ramp, and you're going to be able to see the different QuickBooks files you've connected to LiveFlow on this right panel. So for instance, Acme US. Let's say that you want to create a standard report for Acme US. You'd be able to pull in live reports directly from QuickBooks Online or Xero, these forms of reports, right? So it's fairly extensive, and we want to make sure that you have the complete flexibility as to how you want to manage this report and customize every single element of it as best as we can. So you'll be able to customize the date range that you're pulling from. Do you want it to be this year, this quarter, this fiscal year, right? Do you want to show it this month? And the reason why this is important is because our most advanced users make this extremely dynamic so that when the new quarter comes around, and I'll show you with the example, this quarter is going to show us, of course, January, February, and March. You also have fixed periods, trailing periods, etc. But let's just say you want to use date range for the purposes of our example as this quarter. I'm going to enable drill down, and I'll specify what that exactly means here when we create our first report. How we display the information that's coming from QuickBooks Online, the default we have here is by month, but we also have the ability, as Nigel mentioned, the class, vendors, etc., that you can pull directly from QuickBooks Online, all that is live. We have these advanced filters, etc., that I'm not going to go into for the purpose of time because I absolutely want to touch on the consolidation portion, which is the main value add here. But I'm going to go ahead and create our first report. What we now have is a live look, a mirror image of what's appearing in our QuickBooks Online file for Acme US. We're looking at the profit and loss statement. We're looking at a date range of this quarter, displaying the columns by month, and we also have a timestamp of when it was last updated. Right? So every single hour we're looking and we're seeing and making sure that we're bringing the most up-to-date information. As I mentioned, creating dynamic reports is extremely important, especially when you're thinking about FP&A. And so when next quarter comes around, without you even having to do anything, this report in Google Sheets, in Excel, is going to be changed by LiveFlow to reflect the current quarter. And now you will see in April, for instance, April, May, and June. You'll also notice here that there is these, it's highlighted blue. One of what I find the coolest features of LiveFlow is drill down. So as soon as I hover over and click drill down, what we're now doing is we're able to actually zone in and see individual transactions that were coded via Ramp. So thinking of Ramp and LiveFlow as an end-to-end solution, you're seeing transaction by transaction drill down capabilities with our platform, right? So if you're in the middle of a meeting and they're asking, or whoever it is, maybe the CEO or maybe it is your client, whatever it may be, you're able to then see and drill down into understanding the exact transactions associated with it. We also want to maintain the flexibility. So even if you were to insert columns and rows, that is not going to disrupt the data, right? So you're able to insert columns and rows, and the reports are going to refresh seamlessly. Now, the question is when we come to consolidation, because I do want to focus on that, what happens when we have not only just Acme US, but we have Demo US as well, right? We have not just that entity, but we now also need to start thinking about a consolidation. And once again, consolidation is bringing together multiple QuickBooks files together. So we have, for instance, 3 different QuickBooks files. All right, this is looking at the profit and loss of each individual one. Prior to LiveFlow, maybe your workflow looked like you had to, once again, map the individual accounts and then create a separate sheet, which we'd call a consolidated sheet, which brings together all these individual profit and loss statements. With LiveFlow, it's way simpler. What you're going to see is as I move to app.liveflow.io, we're now moving into our app that we're doing online, right? So the mapping process that was pretty manual and pretty risk-prone is now going to be automated. If we go to the consolidation tab, there are 3 steps here. The first is to simply let LiveFlow know what is your consolidation group. So let's just say, LiveFlow Ramp webinar. So you've told LiveFlow this is the consolidation group that I want to create. We're able to support multiple currencies, right? Over 100 currencies. And the next step is to simply add the QuickBook files through this button, Add Company. These are the 3 QuickBook files we saw in our spreadsheet. So we're seeing Acme US, Demo Acme Inc., and Demo Real Estate Inc. You can also filter by class and location if you wanted to. Now, the last step, and which I find is the most powerful step, is how LiveFlow tackles the mapping process. What you're seeing right now is those 3 QuickBook files and their general ledger accounts. Instead of having to use formulas, we can now create our custom chart of accounts. So on this left side here is where I'm doing that. So let's just say if I have online sales as my first consolidated account, I type online sales, hit enter, and now you register to LiveFlow that this is a consolidated account. Now I'm simply going to click across different entities the accounts that are related to online sales. And the purposes of example, I've selected these 4 accounts. And I'll pause right there. This right here, once I click online sales, is going to indicate to us that you're intentionally trying to map these 4 independent accounts into online sales for your consolidated statement. Right? And so you then have the flexibility to name it whatever you'd like and continue to go about the mapping process across these different entities. I also want to point out one of the cool features, which is auto mapping. If you have identical ledger accounts between 3 different entities, let's just say, you select all the accounts, and we can also copy select it as consolidated accounts. What this does is LiveFlow is once again going to do the heavy lifting. We're now going to recognize and see what are the identical accounts that you have between entities, and we're going to consolidate it for you. So it's removing one additional step if you needed to. Once again, we are able to do this with the balance sheet and the cash flow statement, but for the purpose of time, what I'm showcasing here is now we have our COGS, expenses, other income, and other expenses, where we go about the same exact process. But once again, we don't want to take you away from spreadsheets, right? The power of LiveFlow, I find, is that we want to retain that flexibility. So what we can do now is if we go back into our workbook and we go to Extensions, LiveFlow, Create Report, and now you'll see if we scroll down under Consolidation, this is exactly what we just did on the app, LiveFlow Ramp Webinar. We were mapping the profit and loss statement, and once again, we have the ability to use the specific date range that you would like to specify. So if it's this year or this month, whatever that may be. I'm going to go ahead and create our first report, which is displaying the columns by company, but I'm also going to showcase by month. And once again, I'm creating 3 independent reports. And I'm going to also show one last one, which is company, our month by company. There it is. These are some views that our clients have found very helpful, especially the finance teams, where without having to create new formulas, within a matter of seconds after doing the mapping, LiveFlow is the one that is slicing and dicing the data. So this is our first statement, consolidated statement that we had created, right? And that drill down functionality still applies, right? So we're looking at these individual entities for this specific period of this year. And now we're seeing how these individual entities are performing. And look at that, we've got our custom chart of accounts on the left side. If you remember, we had used online sales and retail sales, and that's what we're seeing here. And so we've taken a process that usually takes several days, right? And as one of our customers, Nilo, said, it used to take him 3 to 4 days to do this every single month. But now it can be done in a matter of minutes, as we see here. Of course, when it comes to mapping, you want to make sure that it is mapped properly. But we're automating some of those painful tasks. These other 2 reports are once again looking at the same exact mappings that you've done. We're just displaying the information slightly differently to exactly what you want to see. So if instead you want to see the consolidation of 3 different entities together across the entire year, that's what you're seeing here, right? This 346 value, this 3 million value of online sales is looking at across these 3 different entities, this is the amount that you've mapped to online sales. And maybe I'll go ahead and use that drill down functionality to show you exactly how that looks. Is now, if you are in a meeting and you want to see that consolidated account, what did you had actually mapped there? Now you're seeing that instead of flipping back and forth between QuickBooks, between Excel files and Google Sheets, now you're able to do this in one single place. So this last thing here is looking at, if you want to see it month by company, once again, just another way to slice and dice the data. Now, before I kind of pause, and as you know, we're approaching the end of the webinar here, this is our consolidation product, which simplifies a task that not only takes several hours, but once again, de-risks the entire process. You have several people who are maybe creating that consolidated statement, but now you have the ability to do that mapping process on our platform. But I do want to touch on the visualization element lastly. Maybe you're getting ready for a board report. We also have live dashboards. We're once again back on app.liveflow.io, and I'm on this tab called Dashboards. If we go here and open up, you can either create one from scratch, or you can use one that has been pre-made, and that is one that I'll use right now, which is a consolidation dashboard. So now, without doing any work, we are now able to create visualizations for the mapping that we had just done, literally live on the webinar, right? So it's taking these things that not only are you just doing the bare minimum, per se, of creating a financial statement, but now you're giving it to an audience and making it interpretable to them via these types of dashboards. You can share these dashboards via links. You can also PDF these. But the point being is that you can now add an additional value with consolidation, and that is the presentation element of it. I know that was a lot of content that we went over there, but I can't stress enough that this product, in terms of when people have started to use it, it really changes the way in which they operate. Callsheet, for instance, is in the news more recently. They are also one of the users of LiveFlow's consolidation, and the amount of time and energy that's saved through the product has been fun to see, to say the least, since we launched it back in November of 2023. So to wrap things up here for the webinar, we just want to summarize exactly what Nigel and I have kind of touched on across automating. Yes, absolutely, right? The fact that you can take your Ramp card, spend, and make sure that it is coded properly and flowing directly into QuickBooks. And then not only that, but now LiveFlow on the other end, you're able to automate the other side of it. And all those values are now pulled directly into your Google Sheets or Excel. And there's less risk associated with any part of this, right? The less people that are touching each of these formulas, et cetera, the more likely it is that you're going to create accurate financial statements. Every single hour, LiveFlow is the one that is going to make sure that the data is up to date. And it is the most efficient way in which you're creating these financial statements. For Ramp, you're able to have the cards and set specific parameters, as Nigel showed, when it comes to specific vendors, et cetera. And lastly, what we would just want to hone in on is the fact that it is an end-to-end solution. If you're a Ramp user, you maybe should think about LiveFlow. And if you're a LiveFlow user, maybe you should think about Ramp to kind of help with the other end, right? But the idea is that from spend management to consolidated reporting, Ramp and LiveFlow will serve as your end-to-end solution in automating ledger data. And of course, the last thing before we open it up to Q&A is some incentives, of course, that our sales team was kind enough to offer here. And for anybody who's tuning in to the webinar, for the Ramp, for those interested in Ramp, the webinar attendees receive $500 in sign-up bonus, and we should be able to drop that in the chat as well. And then for those looking to get started with LiveFlow in March, we do have an additional incentive, which is you will receive 25% off for the first 3 months. So please do feel free to reach out to Nigel or myself directly if you have any questions. I know we covered a lot of different content. And better yet, if you were to book a demo with either of us, I'm sure that our teams would be able to assist and answer any questions as well. But with that said, I'll pause and see if there are some questions in the chat here.
Yeah, I think we went through and answered most of them. I was looking at the Q&A too, and I think most people ended up transferring questions into the chat. But if anyone does have any last minute questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat now, and we're happy to answer them. But as Josh said, Ramp and LiveFlow are unbelievable partners together in helping to automate your accounting processes, from your actual spending situations to your reporting and analysis and consolidation too, which can be a pain for businesses. These tools are incredibly powerful for helping companies accomplish this easily and quickly.
Excellent. I think, Nigel, you actually did a great job. I didn't even notice for all our audience members, but Nigel was answering questions, which is great. So I appreciate that. So I think a lot of these questions are actually already answered. But as Nigel said, we are excited by the partnership. And once again, if you have any questions, feel free to let us know and reach us out directly. My email is josh@liveflow.io. And Nigel, maybe if you want to share your email as well to contact you directly as well. And maybe
Yeah,
we'll put that in the
absolutely.
chat as well.
nreef@ramp.com. I just put it into the chat. And as Josh had said too, we're going to be sending out messages after the webinar too to all of our registrants with all this information readily available to you as well, along with the recording. So thank you all though for attending. We really appreciate your time. We hope you found this really valuable.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.